Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel and Mirz Hashem today. We will be learning Daf Nun Hey Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on Daf Nun Dalid Amid Beis, 2 lines off the bottom. Siman Ayin Reish Hey Sif Hey. Our learning should be Oschus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Mesuna Batzar Bashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitziyah Mitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'Oira U'Mishibed L'Geula Hashta B'Gala V'Zman Kariv and Emar Mein. Our learning should be Oschus for Fuy Shalema for Tzvi Ben Leah Miriam, and our learning should be Oschus for Yisrael Ben Rachel, Yonasan Ben Michal, and Yoel Ben Michal. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over them, together with all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makom shehem. So, we've been learning here in Siman Ayin Reish Hey the halachas pertaining to what kind of things you're not allowed to do la'or haner on Shabbos. Back in the day, when they used fire for illumination, they used lamps for illumination. The most common form of lamp was a lamp that used oil for a fuel. So you had oil in a lamp and a wick. And the Chachamim said, you're not allowed to do things that require concentration by the light of such a lamp. Why? Because there was a fear, Shema Yavai Lahatos. Maybe you'll come to tilt the lamp. Why would you tilt the lamp? Because by tilting the lamp, you direct more fuel to go to the wick. The oil will travel faster up the wick. You'll get a brighter flame, and you'll increase the brightness of the lamp. Now, of course, this would be usher because you'd be over the Issa Daraisa of Mavir. You're going and you're making a flame bigger on Shabbos. That would be an Issa Daraisa. So the Chachamim said, there are things you're not allowed to do la'ar haner. For example, you're not allowed to read a sefer la'ar haner because you might come to be mate the ner. Now, having said that, the Mechaber told us that really this only pertains to one person reading alone. But if you have 2 people who are reading together, so you have 2 chavrusas and they're learning the daf together, and they're both looking in the Gemara together and they're learning the Gemara, over there it's not a problem. Why? Because should one of them stretch out their hand to be mate the ner, the other one will stop him. The other one will say, well, Shabbos, don't do that, so it's no problem. Now we get to Sifhei, second to last line here on the Dalan Amid Beis. Says the Mechaber, B'Medurah, when it comes to a bonfire, comes to a very large fire, then afilu asara ke'echad ein koren. Even if you have 10 people together, you're still not allowed to read la'ar haner. Why not? Mishum dahoil v'yoshvim rechoikim zemizeh, because by a bonfire, the people could be sitting very far apart from each other, and therefore they're not going to realize when one of them stretches out his hand to go adjust a burning piece of wood that happens to be near him to increase the illumination. Now, when I first read this, I really didn't understand what it means. I was very puzzled by this Mechaber, because to me what the Mechaber seemed to be saying was, when you have an oil lamp, 2 people are allowed to read together, because if one goes to be mate the ner, the other one will stop him. But by a Medurah, by a large fire, over there, 2 people cannot go ahead and read la'ar haner together. Why? Because they're going to be sitting very far apart from each other. Says who? Why can't 2 people sit next to each other by a Medurah? And I was puzzling about this, and my son Menachem turned around and pointed out to me, he said, no, it could very well be what the Mechaber means over here is the nature of a Medurah. And if you look at the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos and Daf Yud Beis and your Ma'ayin in the Rashi, I think it comes out clear this way. The nature of a Medurah, the nature of a bonfire is that it throws light over a large area. Since it throws light over a large area, too many people could read by the light of the bonfire, even if they are sitting far apart from each other. The nature of a small lamp is, if 2 people want to read together, they have to be sitting right next to each other. So if 2 people are sitting right next to each other, they're allowed to read by the light of an air, because one will remind the other. But by a Medurah, they don't have to be sitting next to each other, because the Medurah spreads out the light over a large area. So it's very easy for 2 people to read by the illumination of the same bonfire and yet be sitting very far apart from each other. Therefore, the Chachamim said, By a bonfire, you don't have this heter, because by a bonfire, one person might be sitting here and one person might be sitting very far away, and they're not going to be able to remind each other not to be mate something that's burning from the bonfire to increase the illumination. Now, it's true, it could be that by a bonfire, two people are sitting next to each other, but for that, the Chazal made a loy plug. The Chazal said that by the light of a bonfire, this heter doesn't apply, because the nature of a bonfire is they might be sitting far apart from each other, in which case there's no protection. Having said that, says the Mechaber Vait, he says, V'oid, there's another reason why you cannot read by the light of a Madura, even if there are multiple people reading together. V'oid, shen zanvois ha'udim smuchim lahem. When people are sitting around a bonfire, so whenever you have a bonfire, you have the big logs that are burning in the middle, but then you have the twigs and the small branches that kind of fall down and they're sitting around on the edge of the fire. So zanvois ha'udim, the ends of the burning sticks, smuchim lahem, they end up being very close and very accessible to the people that are sitting around the fire. Basically, you have a perfect storm. You have a situation where people are not necessarily sitting close to each other. At the same time, the zanvoi sa'udim, the ends of the burning sticks at the edges of the fire, are very close to the people that are sitting around the edges of the fire. So it's very easy and quick for a person to just quickly stick out his hand and adjust one of those burning sticks, and the other people sitting around the fire will not see it and they won't stop him. So there's no protection against the risk of Shema Yavai Lahatois, that somebody might come to adjust a fire and be over on the Issa Daraisa of Mavir, and therefore there is no heter here, even for multiple people to read together from the light of a bonfire. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Yud Gimel, Ein Kairin, Ritzayin Loimar, what the Mechaber wants to tell us over here in this sif is, Afilu be'inyan echad, la'araner shari, even when it's mutter for two people to read together from the light of a lamp, which is when it's at least two people, and they're reading inyan echad. Like I said, they're learning the daf together, so they're learning the same stuff together, right? We said that this heter doesn't apply if one person is learning daf nun daled amud beis, the other person is learning daf nun hey amud aleph. So Reuven is concentrating on nun daled amud beis, Shimon is concentrating on nun hey amud aleph. Even though they happen to be reading together, they're not paying attention to each other. But the heter does apply if they're reading inyan echad, if they're learning together one topic. In Sif Hey, the Mechaber is telling me, even when we have that heter by the or of a ner, the la'araner shari, over here by the or of a madura, the heter doesn't apply. V'ayin ba'olas tamid, take a look at the Sefer Olas Tamid, de'em bikesh la'echad sheyitei daiter alav shelo yechateh the mutter. We still have the availability of the other heter that we learned about previously. And that is if you have people sitting around a bonfire and they appoint a shomer. If somebody asks somebody, listen, be my shomer, I'm going to chazer the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah now by the light of this Madura, but there's a problem, I might lose myself in concentration, and I might come to be mata the ner, do me a favor, be my shomer, watch me, and if you see me stretch out my hand, stop me, then it would be mutter. Ve'eviyah ha'el Yerabah, the El Yerabah brings down this heter as well, besides what is brought down in the Sefer Olas Tamid. Ois Katan Yud Daled. Over here, people aren't going to realize what you're doing, and therefore there's a fear that you might come lahavir ulachatois. Lahavir means to make the fire bigger, ulachatois, and to stoke either the fire or to adjust something that's burning. Kasav HaTaz, Nirali, the Taz writes that from this sif over here in Siman Ayin Reish, Nirali, it would seem to me, the Afa Pisha Mutar lehischamim neged hamadura, even though there is a heter on Shabbos to sit around a bonfire for warmth. If it's a cold night during the winter and you want to sit around a bonfire to warm up, we're going to see that you're allowed to do that. The Isa Saif Siman Reish Ayin Vav. We'll see that Mir Hashem in the next Siman. Mikamakim, nevertheless, what we see from here, Siman Ayin Reish Hey Sif Hey, is Ein Leishev Besamuch Eitzel Zanvoy Sa'udim. Since we see over here that the Mechaber is concerned with the fact that the Zanvoi Sa'udim, the ends of the burning sticks, are very close and very accessible to those that are sitting around the fire, and therefore there's a fear of Shema Yavai Lahatois, that fear would apply also when you're sitting around the bonfire for warmth. And therefore the Taz says, Ein leishev besamuch eitzel zanvoi sa'udim. when you do sit around a bonfire for warmth, don't sit very close where you're very close to those zanvoi sa'udim. Because we're afraid you might stretch out your hand and move one of those burning sticks so that it should burn well. The way that's the derech. When people have a bonfire, there's always somebody who's tending the fire. And the one who tends the fire, think about Erev Pesach when they're burning the chametz, right? There's always somebody over there who's tending the fire, and he's got a long poker or something, and he makes sure to shove the pieces from the end of the fire, to shove them into the middle. So we always have to be concerned that somebody shouldn't come to do that on Shabbos. However, there are others, El Yerabah, the Tais Shabbos, who write that we're not concerned when people are sitting around the fire to stay warm. We're not afraid that they're going to do this. Okay. Now let's turn to Sivav, top line, Nun Hey Amid Aleph. Tinoikos shel beis Rabban. School children, right? Kids who are in Cheder. And it's Shabbos, and they're learning on Shabbos. Tinoikos shel beis Rabban. Kids that are learning on Shabbos. Kairin la'ar haner. They are allowed to read from their svarim la'ar haner. Why is that? Explains the Mechaber, Ne'she'emas Rabban aleihem, because the fear of their Rebbe is upon them. We're not afraid that they're going to come to tilt the nair because of the fear of their Rebbe. Now, Mishnah Berurah explains what that means. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Tesvav. She'emas Rabban, very interesting Chavetz Chaim, and very interesting in light of what seems to go on in many yeshiva rooms nowadays. Says the Chavetz Chaim is cut in Tesvav. What does this mean? She'emas Rabban alein, that the fear of the Rebbe is upon them. She'ein poshtin yad l'shum davar. These tinoikos shel beis Rabban, they don't stretch out their hands to do anything. Va'afilu b'choil, even during the week. Ela al pi Rabban. Says the Chavetz Chaim that what the Mechaber means is, back in the day, the Cheder children, they sat over there by their desks, and they wouldn't stretch out their hands to do anything. Forget Hilchos Shabbos. Even during the week, they wouldn't stretch out their hands to do anything without reshus from the Rebbe. So there's no way that on Shabbos the kid is going to go ahead and be mata aner. He wouldn't dare be mata aner even on a Tuesday without getting reshus from his Rebbe first. And therefore there's no possibility that the Tinoikos shel beis Rabban are going to go to be mata aner on Shabbos. Then says the Chavetz Chaim, Umashma mistimas HaShulchan Aruch. From the way the Shulchan Aruch writes this in very generalized terms, the Mechaber wrote, Tinoikos shel beis Rabban are allowed to read la'ar haner because of the fear of their Rebbe. He doesn't say that the Tinoikos shel beis Rabban are allowed to read la'ar haner when the Rebbe is in front of them. He just says, Tinoikos shel beis Rabban, stam. Tinoikos shel beis Rabban that are sitting together to learn, they're allowed to read la'ar haner because the fear of their Rebbe is upon them. Says the Chavetz Chaim, it's an interesting diuk. Mashma mistimas HaShulchan Aruch shesayvik Rashba. It sounds like the Mechaber holds like the Shitas HaRashba. What's the Shitas HaRashba? Da'afilu ein Rabban imahin shari. Even if the Rebbe stepped out of the room, so the Rebbe is not actually physically present at the moment, the Tinoikos shel beis Rabban are still allowed to read from a sefer. The kol shah misyarin sheyavai Rabban v'loyatu, because they're always afraid that the Rebbe might walk in at any minute. It's like what we talk about by a hashkacha. There's a mirsas, there's a steady worry, a steady fear. The Rebbe might walk in any minute. If the Rebbe walks in and he sees me stretching out my hand to be mata aner, I'm going to be in trouble. So therefore, the Tinoikos shel beis Rabban are always allowed to read la'ar haner, even if the Rebbe is not in the room. However, the El Yerabah brings down many poskim that disagree with this Shitas HaRashba. Sev Zayin, says the Mechaber, Mutter likrais b'mem madlikin la'ar haner. A very interesting exception to the rule that you're not allowed to read la'ar haner. And that is, you're allowed to read the second parak of Masechta Shabbos, the Mishnayos of the second parak of the Masechta Shabbos, parak b'mem madlikin, that we say Friday night. You're allowed to say that. You're allowed to read that la'ar haner on Shabbos. Why, says the Mechaber? Sharei hu mazkir iser Shabbos. Because what does it say in Parak Bameh Madlikin? In Parak Bameh Madlikin, it talks about the types of oil that you're not allowed to use as fuel for Neiros of Shabbos. And why aren't you allowed to use them? Because they don't burn a nice clean flame, and because they don't burn a nice clean flame, we're afraid that you might be mata the Ner. So the Mishnayos of Parak Bameh themselves talk about this problem of Shema Yavar Lahatos. So says the Mechaber, Ve'ech Yishkach. How could you possibly forget yourself and forget Hilchos Shabbos and go to be mata the Ner when that's exactly what you're learning about? Says the Mishnah Berurah, is cotton to Zayin likrois bameh madlikin, mashma dafka bameh madlikin. However, what we see from the Mechaber is that it's only Parak Bameh Madlikin that you're allowed to read L'Araner, Shesham Nizkar in Yonei Isar Hadlaka, because it's in Parak Bameh Madlikin that we discuss this very problem of inferior fuels that don't burn well, and therefore you might come to be mata aner. And therefore we say the eich yishkach v'yadlik. How could you come to forget that halacha and end up going and being mavir and going to be mata aner? Avol sha'arei hilchos Shabbos loy. But we don't say that you could go ahead and you could learn parakira and you could learn about bishul, etc., la'ar haner, because you're being oisik in hilchos Shabbos. It's not a blanket rule that as long as you're reading something, you're learning the halachas of Berurah. So since you're dealing with Hilchos Shabbos, we're not worried that you're afraid that you're going to forget the halacha of Shabbos and you're going to come to Mata Aner. No, we only say that when that's the exact halacha that you're learning about in Parak Bameh Madlikin. Then we say we're not afraid you're going to forget the halacha and you're going to be Mata the Ner. Sef Ches, a very interesting heter. Noihagim, the minig is likrois b'leil Yom Kippurim b'machzorim, that you're allowed to read the tefillos of Yom Kippur out of a machzer Yom Kippur by night l'or haner. Right? We said earlier, the Ramah brought down earlier, that since we have this halacha that you're not allowed to read from a sefer l'or haner because you might come to be bata haner, so the Ramah said you can't read the piyutim on Yom Tov. If Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, you can't read the piyutim in shul out of a machzer because each person has his own individual machzer. Nobody's going to be protecting you if you stretch out your hand to be bata haner. So forget it. You can't say piyutim out of a siddur on Yom Tov night when it falls out on Shabbos. Over here it says the Mechaber, how about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, you could read the tefillos of Yom Kippur out of a machzer l'or haner. Why? Mipnei she'emas Yom HaKippurim aleihem. Because the fear of Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah Yikasevun, of Yom Kippur Yechasemun, the fear of Yom Kippur, the ema, the yiras, the yira of the din, that is going to make sure that there's no way on Yom Kippur, on Yom Kaddish, somebody is going to goof up and go ahead and be mata aner, and therefore you're allowed to read from a machzer on Yom Kippur or haner. There's no Mishnah Berurah on Sif Ches. Turning to Sif Tes, 3 lines down, Nun Hey and Aleph, says the Mechaber. Leil Pesach shechal lihiyos b'Shabbos. Let's say it's the Seder night, and it happens to be Pesach fell out on Shabbos, so it's the Seder night, but it's also Shabbos. So now, how about to read the Haggadah? Am I allowed to read the Haggadah l'or haner? Now, I should just point out, the truth is I should have pointed this out in the previous share as well. We're only worried about Pesach night if it happens to fall out on Shabbos. Let's say it's not Shabbos. Let's say it's the Seder night on a Tuesday night. That's okay. Then we're not worried. Then your Zich are allowed to read the Haggadah l'or haner. Why? Because being mata the ner wouldn't be aser. Being mata the ner would be doing havara l'tzarich Yom Tov. Reading the Haggadah is tzarich Yom Tov. You're allowed to make a fire l'tzarich Yom Tov on Yom Tov. The problem is, what if Pesach is on Shabbos? Shabbos, there's no heter to make a fire, even l'tzarich Yom Tov. So now the Mechaber says, are you allowed to read the Haggadah? Now, if 2 people would be reading the Haggadah together out of one Haggadah, and they're both reading the same thing, they're both reading Avodim Hayinu, so they're being oisik be'inyan echad, and they're doing it together out of one sefer, that would be mutter, because one will protect the other. But that's usually not the scenario. Everybody's sitting around the Seder table, they each have their own Haggadah. Even though they're reading maybe inyan echad, Maybe everybody's up to Dayenu, but still in all, they each have their own sefer, which the Ramah said is a problem. We don't have the protection that they're protecting each other if they each have their own sefer. Having said that, says the Mechaber Siftes, Leil Pesach Shechal Liyos B'Shabbos, if the Seder night falls out on Shabbos, Mutter Likrois HaHaggadah B'Sefer, you're allowed to read from a Haggadah La'ar Haner. Why? Mishum dehevi ke'ein Roshei Prokim. Because reading the Haggadah is like what we're going to see in the next sif. We're going to see in the next sif, if somebody really knows something by heart. But sometimes when you need something by heart, you need a quick reminder at the beginning of the paragraph. This is like a Bal Koreh, an experienced Bal Koreh who has to prepare laning for Shabbos. Now, he really knows the Kriya, but he just needs to remind himself, he needs to see the trop on the first pasuk, and then once he sees that, he could go weiter. So, Roshei Prokim, sometimes you need to look at the Roshei Prokim just to get a reminder. In the next sif, we're going to see, if you know something by heart, and you just want to look at the Roshei Prokim, you're allowed to do that La'ar Haner, because we're not afraid in that case that you're going to come to be mata the ner when you're just looking at Roshei Prokim. Says the Mechaber, the Haggadah is like Roshei Prokim, and the Mechaber explains. He says, "De'ein ama oretz sheloi tehei shkura b'fiv k'tzas." The Mechaber says, there's nobody who's hazah ama oretz that he's not at least basically familiar with the Haggadah. Right? You're going to start him off on Dayenu, but he's going to know at least the basics of the Haggadah by heart, and therefore this is like Roshei Prokim, and we're not afraid that he's going to be so concentrating on looking into the Haggadah and reading each word from the Haggadah that he might come to stretch out his hand and be mate aner. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Yud Zayin, De'ein ama oretz. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'imhu ama oretz, shaloi lam ad me'olam. What if you have a real bona fide ama oretz, a real certified ama oretz? He never learned anything. Ve'ein shagar b'fiv klal b'li siddur. Baruch Hashem, he's a recent, a brand new newly minted Bal Tshuva. He never read the Haggadah in his life. So no, it's not shagar b'fiv at all. So he really needs to read every word from the Sefer. If he has another person with him, and he could say to him, listen, do me a favor, I got to read every word out of the Haggadah, and I'm doing it la'ar haner, and I'm concentrating, there's a problem, I might come to be mata the ner, be my shomer. If he has a shomer, then it would be mutter. But what if he doesn't have a shomer? So again, it's a perfect storm. He's not shogur, the Haggadah is not shogur b'fiv at all. He doesn't know the Haggadah at all. So he really has to concentrate. And he doesn't have anybody there to be a shomer. What's the halacha then? Says the Mishnah Berurah, mikol makom efshar gam kein tiesh lahakol. It could be that by the Haggadah, we would be makel anyway. Shaloi levatel mitzvahs Haggadah, shehu min HaTorah. Let's remember that Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is a chiyuv daraisa. So by a chiyuv daraisa, like Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're going to be makel, and we're not going to let the takanas chazal to not let you read la'ar haner because you might come to be mata the ner. We're not going to let that stand in the way. Afilu ein loy rak ner shel shemen. Even if he only has an oil lamp, if he has a candle, then we could definitely be makel, because we already saw shitas before that hold that a candle is always mutter, because there's no mitzias of being mata a candle. A candle is solid fuel wrapped around a wick. There's no such thing as being mata it, tilting it in order to make the flame burn brighter. So therefore there are those that hold that by a candle it would be gar mutter. But even by an oil lamp, the Mishnah Berurah is saying, by the Haggadah we could be makel because of the mitzvah daraisa of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Ois Katan Yud Ches, the Mechaber had said that there's nobody who isn't at least ktsas, at least a little bit familiar with the Haggadah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mitam zeh, for the same rationale, yesh lahatir, we could be makel and we would be matir, lamashkim b'Shabbos lebeis hakneses. Somebody who gets up early, he's getting up early, he davens v'sikin Shabbos morning. Now if you daven v'sikin on Shabbos, you need a half hour for brachas of a psuki de zimra, and then brachas kriya shema before you get up to Shemona Esrei that you want to daven at nets. So when you start davening, it's going to be dark outside. So says the Mishnah Berurah, Mitam zeh yesh lahata lamashkim b'Shabbos l'beis hakneses. If somebody gets up very early and goes to shul Shabbos morning, u'mispalel la'araner adolik sham miba'oyon, and he wants to daven from a ner that's still burning from yesterday, we could be mater him to go ahead and daven la'ar haner. He's alone. He doesn't have a shomer. He doesn't have anybody davening with him out of the same sitter. We could be mater it anyway. Why? Levisha tfilu ushari dvarim shu omer vaday shkurim b'fiv yosem in ha'agada b'Pesach. The Shabbos morning davening that you daven every single week is at least as shogar b'fiv. You're at least as fluent in that as you are in the Haggadah. If the Mechaber says we could be mater the Haggadah because most people are at least somewhat fluent in the Haggadah, and therefore it doesn't need a level of concentration which is going to result in the possibility of them being mater and ner because they forgot themselves, the weekly Shabbos davening you're at least as fluent in, and therefore we don't have to have a fear of Shema Yata. Aval lil moicham. But if somebody comes to shul early Shabbos morning and he wants to chaza the daf la'ar haner aser, that would be aser kevich tzarchiyud, because that already needs concentration, and for that you might come to forget yourself. Turning to Sif Yud, says the Mechaber, Harav yachal lirois la'ar haner mehechan yikru hatinoikos. You have the Rebbe who's teaching the tinoikos shel beis Rabban. Right, so he is walking around the room and he's saying the Chumash together with the kids. He's going around the room and he's doing the Chumash with the kids. Now he really knows Parshas Noach Bal Peh. He's been teaching this for years. But again, it's like we said with the Rashi Prakim. Every now and then the Rebbe might have to look into the Chumash just to remind himself, where am I up to? Which pasuk is next? Says the Mechaber, that would be okay. The Rebbe is allowed to do that la'ar haner. Harav yachal lirois la'ar haner mehechan yikra tinoikos. He's allowed to look in the Chumash la'ar haner to know where the children have to read from next. Ulisader roshei aparshiyos befiv basefer. And he could look in the Chumash just to get the first few words of each parsha. V'kari kol shara parsha al peh. The rest of the parsha, he's going to say by heart, without looking into the Chumash la'ar haner. So it's only the beginnings that he's looking at. And says the Mechaber, V'roshi Parshas Lav Dafka. And the Mechaber says, when I'm telling you that the Rebbe is allowed to look at the beginning of the Parsha, doesn't mean specifically the beginning of the Parsha. Ella, Kol Sheyedeya Parsha Al Peh. Whenever we're dealing with something that the Rebbe really knows by heart, Ubiktsas Tzarech Lirois Basefer. He has to look in the Sefer every now and then to remind himself, I don't remember exactly which word came next, or I don't remember the exact words of the pasuk. I forgot a word or two. But basically, he knows it Bal Peh. That the Rebbe is allowed to do la'ar haner. Anybody else is allowed to do that la'ar haner too. Shemei aku she'ena ma'ayin b'sefer tamid. Because since the person who's doing this is not reading out of the Sefer consistently, most of what he's doing Bal Peh. He's only looking in the Sefer every now and then as a reminder, Islay Hakera. That itself acts as a reminder, V'loi Asi Lahatuye. In other words, why isn't he walking around with a Chumash and reading everything out of the Chumash La'ar haner? Because he knows that the halacha on Shabbos is that you're not allowed to read La'ar haner. We're letting him look in the Chumash every now and then. Yes, he's allowed to look in the Chumash every now and then to remind himself of the exact phraseology of a pasuk, or to remind himself exactly which parsha he's up to. But by virtue of the fact that we're only allowing him to look in the Chumash every now and then, and he's not reading everything out of the Chumash, that alone will serve to remind him of the halacha, that you're not allowed to read la'ar haner, because you might come to be mateh. Okay, there was no Mishnah Berurah on Sif Yud. Turning to Sif Yud Aleph, says the Mechaber. I just want to point out one biur halacha over here. There's a very cute biur halacha. Biur halacha dibra hamaskel kol sheyodeya. It comes out that the halacha of Sif Yud, if we have to say the halacha of Sif Yud in a very shortened version, what we would say the halacha of Sif Yud is that when you know something very fluently, when you know something Bal Peh, you're allowed to look in a Sefer, la'ar haner, every now and then to get a quick reminder. We're not afraid that if you look to get a quick reminder and it's dim, you might be mateh ner. We're not afraid of that. Says the biur halacha in Dibra Masel Kol Sheyedeh, Pashut, it's obvious, to who adin the same halacha would apply, im yoideh eza sugya. if you're very, very well versed in a sugya in Shas, if Yir Shaloi Midas in the beginning of Bab Metzia was one of your favorite sugyas, one of your favorite topics in Shas, and you wrote 6 chaburas on Yir Shaloi Midas, so you know those bletter in Masechtas Baba Kama cold. So yeah, you could take out a Baba Kama Gemara and you could put it down L'Araner and you could chazer iber the Gemara Baal Peh and you could look for the third Toshma. You're not sure which Toshma was third. You're allowed to look in the Gemara and you're allowed to take a quick look. Oh, which Toshma was that? Okay, fine, I know what it is. And then go weiter, and we're not afraid you're going to be matter than air. Then says the Chavetz Chaim, that's true in Yedeh is a sugya umesechta. Okay, how about it is a mesechta that you know Baal Peh? You went ahead and you learned Masechtas Baba Basra Baal Peh, and now you're chazering Iber Masechtas Baba Basra, but you want to have a Gemara open on the table so that every now and then you can take a quick look at the page. You're allowed to do that, L'Araner. You're allowed to take a quick look. That's like Rosh Prakim. That would be mutter. Turning to Sif Yud Aleph, says the Mechaber, Kelim hadoimim ze lozeh. Let's say you need to pick out Kelim. You're setting the table Friday night for the Friday night Suda, and you want everybody to have matching drinking glasses. But you've got 3 different sets of glasses, and they're all in the same cabinet. And this one is just a little bit different than that one. So you need to look at the glasses and select the right glasses. Kelim adoimim ze lozeh. If you have kelim, utensils, vessels that are very similar one to the other, v'tzarich iyun lahavchin beineim. And they're so similar that you need iyun. You know, it's not just, that one, that one. No, you need to take a close look. Are these the matching set or are they not the matching set? Then, also labotkan l'araner. You're not allowed to inspect the different kelim l'araner. Because again, this is something that requires concentration. You're going to pick up 2 very similar forks. You have 2 sets of cutlery that are very, very similar. One of them has 3 lines etched in them, and the other one has 4 lines etched in them. And you want to make sure that you give the person sitting around the table the matching spoons and forks and knives. So you're going to take them out, and you're going to be ma'ayin la'araner. You might come to be mata dener. So if they're very similar to each other, and it needs iyun, you're not allowed to do that la'araner because of the chash that you might come to be mata dener. Va'afilu lahavchin bein begadav libigdei ishtoi. Says the Mechaber, even if you get up in the morning, Shabbos morning, and it's dark in the room, and you want to get dressed, and you have your nice white shirt that you want to put on for Shabbos, and your wife has a very nice white blouse that she wants to put on for Shabbos, and her white blouse and your white shirt are right next to each other, and the only difference between her blouse and your shirt is the direction that they button in. So now you got to take it out and you have to be mayin. Which one is her blouse and which one is my shirt? Says the Mechaber, I feel if they're similar, and it's going to take a certain amount of iyun in order to go discern which one is which, Asr Livdoik. You're not allowed to do that, L'Araner, because again, you might come to be Mateh the Ner. Oiskat Yoteh says the Mishnah Berurah, Tzarich Iyun. This is a problem when you're doing something that needs Iyun. You really need to look and concentrate. Brings down the Mishnah Berurah from the Rambam, but Rambam Isa, V'tzarich Iyun Rav. The Rambam adds a word. The Mechaber says it's Tzarich Iyun. It needs iyun. It needs some concentration. The Rambam says tzarich iyun rav. It needs intense concentration. That's when it's aser. V'ayin b'bi'ar halacha. So the Chavetz Chaim says, take a look at the bi'ar halacha. Diyesh lisbay chazeh lifnei ner shel shava v'chelef. If you're using a solid fueled candle, so again, we've always said that the candle is more kal. It's more lenient. We rule more leniently when it comes to a candle than an oil lamp. Like the Mishnah Berurah says, the Balavach yesh makilin, because we already have those shittas that hold that a candle is mutter. So if you have something that needs iyun, but it doesn't need iyun rav, you can do it by a candle. But if it needs iyun rav, you can't do it even by a candle. The Chanal b'sif cotton dalid says the Mechaber ois cotton yud beis. Very similar halacha to the halacha of Yud Aleph. Shamish she'enoi kavua. You have a butler, a shamish, the person who takes care of the kitchen and the dining room. But he's not a shamish kavua. He's not the regular maitre d'. He's a stand-in. So he doesn't know the kalim of this kitchen very well. Shamish she'ena kavua, aser loy livdoik kaisais uka'arois la'araner. He's not allowed to inspect the cups and the dishes la'araner. Memnei she'ena makiran, because he doesn't know them well. He doesn't recognize them well. And therefore, it's going to need iyun. It seems that what this is talking about is, you have a shamish whose job, let's say, it is to set the table. Now, he wants to make sure that he's setting the table with the right cups. He wants to make sure he's using the right dishes. Sometimes he also has to look at the dishes, and he has to see, are they clean or not? Did the guy who washed the dishes Thursday night, did he do a good job or not? So he wants to take out the dishes and make sure that they're clean dishes. Now, the shamish kavua, the regular shamish, he knows the dishes. He knows all of the right cups are over here. All of the right plates are over there. The plates in this stack are clean. The plates in that stack are dirty. He doesn't need iyun in order to select the kalim. He just pulls them out of the cabinet and puts them out on the table. That's not a problem. But if you have a shamish she'enoi kavua, he's the stand-in shamish. Okay, I don't know. I got to make sure I have the matching cups. I got to make sure I got the right size plates. I have to make sure that the plates that I found are clean. I got to look at each one. So a shamish she'enoi kavua cannot inspect the cutlery, the plates, the cups, la'araner. So again, shamish she'enoi kavua, also lived like kaises and ka'aris la'araner. Why? Neishena makiran, because he doesn't know them. Bein bener shemen zayis, bein bener shel neft. He's not allowed to do this if he's using an oil lamp that's fueled with olive oil. He's not allowed to do it if he's using a lamp that's fueled with neft. What's neft? Nafta, I believe, in English. Pirush, the Ramah says, min zefes lavan. It's a type of white or clear pitch. Verei chayra, and it has a bad odor. But what's the point over here? The Mechaber says you're not allowed to do this whether it's olive oil fueled or it's neft fueled. It explains the Mechaber she'oiroi rav, the identifying factor, the critical factor of a lamp of neft is that it's very bright. It's a very bright flashlight. Says the Mechaber, a shamish she'enoi kavua is not even allowed to inspect the cups and the dishes using an arshel, a neft lamp that has a very bright light. You might think, okay, it has a bright light. Why are we choshish that he's going to come to be mate? No, if it's a shamish she'enoi kavua, we're afraid that he might come to be mate the ner, even if it's a ner shel neft. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and chaf. Liv doik. He's not allowed to go inspect the dishes. This shamish she'enoi kavua. Ritzon Eloymar, what the Mechaber is talking about here is liv doik kaisais hadoimin zelozeh. He has to select the right cups. He has different cups that are similar one to the other, and he wants to put out a matched set. He has to pick the right cups to put out on the table. So he has to discern between the different cups. A shamish she'enoi kavua is not allowed to do this l'araner. He doesn't recognize the cups, and therefore he needs iyun harbe. He really has to look closely to pick out the right cups. So he's not allowed to do it, l'araner. Because we're afraid he might come to be mate the ner to increase the illumination. For Ran Kosav, the Ran writes that that's not what this bedika is. It's not selecting the right kaisos. For Ran Kosav shabedika liroisim hem nikiyim. The bedika that we're talking about over here is to see if the cups and the plates are clean. V'shamish kavua, the regular shamish, mimneshu baki behem mikvar, since he's a baki in what's going on in the kitchen here, yodea ezekli einanaki kakach. He knows those are the old cups that don't get really clean. These are the clean ones. So a shamish kavua, we're not worried. A shamish kavua, we are worried. The Mechaber said that you're not allowed to do this even by a ner shel neft she'oiroi rav. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chavalef. The point of the Mechaber is afal pi she'oiroi rav. Even though this ner shel neft makes a lot of light, we're still concerned shemiyata. Kevichu shamish she'enoi kavua. Since we're talking about a shamish she'enoi kavua, even if he has a very bright lamp, we still have to be choshesh shemiyata. Ois kan chapes b'shel neft. No, we didn't do this yet. Hago. Says the Ramah, 3 lines off the bottom, last word on the line, Hago. V'yesh matirin b'shel neft. There are those that disagree with the Mechaber, and they're matir by a ner shel neft, afilu b'shamish she'enoi kavua, even by a stand-in shamish. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chav b'shel neft. Taimam, the rationale of the matirim is the HaTorah loy chashinan. we're not going to be choishish that they might come to be mated in ner by a ner shel neft lefisha oirarav, because there's already plenty of light. There would be no need to be mated in ner. Now, there's another possible reason why we would say that you're not allowed to handle an oil lamp, and that is maybe you'll decide to take some oil out for your salad dressing, right? If you're using shemen zayis, maybe once you're holding the lamp in your hand, maybe you'll scoop out a tablespoon of oil to use it for the salad dressing, which would be mechabe. Says the Mishnah Berurah, l'shemi yistapik lo chashinan. That we're not worried about, mishum demois, because the oil that's being used as fuel in a lamp, that's considered mius. You're not going to use it. It's disgusting. It's repulsive. You're not going to use that for your salad dressing. But that's true, that's true only by neft. In other words, the Ramadra said there are those that are matir, that a shamish she'ena kavua is allowed to select plates and cups if he's using a ner shel neft. Why? Because it's oirarav. It makes a lot of light. There's no kshash shema mate, shema yata. Why aren't you afraid that he might take out some naft and use it for salad dressing? The answer is naft is repulsive. Nobody uses naft for salad dressing. So we're not afraid that Shemi Yistapik. We're not afraid he's going to take out some naft. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, Shemen Zayis, but what if you have a lamp that uses olive oil? The Chen B'shari Shmanim, or other edible oils, canola oil, I don't know, lekule almaser, avocado oil, everybody would say that it's aser to select the cups and the plates from a lamp that uses such an oil. Why? Because you might come to be mistapik. Okay. I think we're going to stop over here, and we will continue next time with the next phrase of the Mechaber, Aval Shamish Kavua, 2 lines off the bottom. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. This list of Limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. Rabban Shem should said, Yeshua's first panas should do them to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the BS Gal Tzedek, B'mher V'yameinu, Amen. Be well.